Is there going to be another short presentation here from staff on Give Responsibly? From Shannon or Martha? Try and make there were some questions on this, so I wanted to give a short update to the council.
Good evening, Martha Paschke, Director of Innovation and Strategy. I'm here tonight to share with you a bit more detail and background on the Give Responsibly campaign, as I know it's raised some questions recently. I did want to acknowledge that the timing has been an issue. We wish we could have presented this sooner, but as everyone knows, there's been a lot going on everywhere. I'll also share at the end some improvements that could be made to the totality of this campaign, because my understanding is that some pieces of it have been more visible to the public than others, and so there might need to be a revisiting on this campaign. You can go ahead to the next slide. Oh, sorry. I haven't done this in a while. Thank you. So the purpose of the campaign, it stemmed from ongoing work to collaborate with community organizations on homelessness. The Innovation and Strategy Division has been working on the issue of homelessness in the city for about 18 months with a number of partners. Most recently, our collaborative group met with over 45 stakeholders from the city, as well as the state's chief homelessness officer.
Could you move closer to your mics?
Yes, sorry.
Thank
Is that better?
Yes.
Okay. So this was initiated through research on best practices around the country in addressing unsheltered homelessness, in particular the compassionate enforcement model, which balances the needs of a city to enforce its ordinances and the needs of individuals struggling to survive and needing more support in the community. It was created to mimic a campaign out of Dallas, Texas, also called Give Responsibly. The intent is to increase giving to organizations providing needed services, as well as connectivity of individuals in need of those services. One anticipated lesson we learned was the highlighting of services that we lack. I did receive a phone call from an individual who felt he had been harmed by the campaign, specifically the street signs, and let me know that because of his status, he was ineligible to receive services from many of the organizations that were listed. So we had a good conversation. I was able to connect him with some different resources and give our 311 staff a heads up on the need for expanding the services that we have listed and available to share with people. This was also a response to some issues faced by the city in 2024. Specifically, APD reported seeing more individuals coming out from the city of Chicago and other locations and panhandling and even selling items on the side of some busy streets and intersections. So there was some safety concern, as well as individuals coming out and leaving unwanted donations at sites where people experiencing homelessness were frequenting, leading to a lot of litter and concern about public health and safety. So that's where this started. The images at the bottom of the screen were the initial carousel explaining the background of the campaign that was intended to be shared through public media, or social media, sorry. So the campaign in total included the logo that was developed, the intro carousel, the street sign, a community resources sticker, which I might have a picture of later, that listed immediate services or the most highlighted services, as well as information for calling 311 and the QR code for scanning to learn about a fuller list of services that are available. There was also a flyer, a window poster, services card that was shared with the COP officers, and 11 additional community educational social media carousels. The sticker ended up not being used. It was intended to go on the back of the signs. There was some concern about safety with driving and being distracted by the sticker. So this is an example of the window posters that were put up at over 40 businesses around the city, as well as some community facilities. It was a call to action to give via the webpage hosted on the city's site. These are some screenshots of that webpage that list ways to give to those organizations, as well as how other organizations can contact us to be listed on the page as well. Additional sub-pages on there were more resources, so the Youth Resource Guide, the Senior Resource Guide, Community Development Resource Guide, Emergency Resource Guide, how to access additional resources, the 211 helpline, information on feeding people experiencing homelessness. A lot of times food donations are given to individuals, but they might have health needs or food sensitivities that need to be taken into consideration, so we need to be sensitive to that. There's a list of services offered, as well as different pantries in the area, and then a page listing information about the temporary warming center, how to access it when it's opened, and how to access information about when it'll be opened, and how to donate to the organization that was contracted last year. So the street signs, again, the intent was to increase giving and connectivity to the organizations providing needed services. You can see the community resources sticker on the far right. That, again, wasn't used. We did talk about removing the QR code to make it less distracting. It was still decided that sticker would be distracting to drivers on the backs of the sign, so it was not used in the end. 16 intersections had been identified. I believe 54 signs were put up in total. And then this was also in part out of, there was a desire to have something put up. There was information in looking at data on giving to individuals that are panhandling that demonstrated that a majority of people, 60 to 90% of people, don't feel comfortable giving directly to people. However, they do feel compassion for those people, and so there was a thought that having something like this indicating a different way that people could give could increase giving to support services that are needed. So the social media carousels covered topics including why people become homeless, myths about homelessness, how Aurora is addressing homelessness, harm reduction, the power of collective action, how to make real impact, a guide to accessing resources, ways to volunteer or donate, small acts equal big impact, how meet your local heroes, and how your donations change lives. The English carousels were all run in April, I believe over the course of about 20 days. 13,000 people or more saw them. A little over 1,000 people clicked on the carousels to learn more. We do have Spanish versions of the carousels that are now complete. And then I just have a few examples because I don't want to take too much of your time and go through all 11, but I've got a couple here. So this was the carousel. So if you're not familiar, carousels are where there's multiple images that kind of slide across, or you might have to click through depending on which social media source it is. So this is the why people become homeless. It talks about the housing crisis, mental health care and healthcare gaps, job loss, financial hardship, unexpected life events, et cetera, to help destigmatize the experience of homelessness. And then the myths about homelessness carousel. I'm not going to go through all of that again. And then how Aurora is addressing homelessness. And this talks about the collaborative work that's needed, and that's been started within the city. So just to wrap up, the Innovation and Strategy Division continues to be dedicated to improving connectivity to services. It's a means to help those in the most need. We do have some recommendations for improving. The community resources stickers are really beneficial, letting people know what resources are out there, and additionally giving them contact for the 311 number so that they can get access to the resources that are not very readily available or that we may be lacking much of in our city. Incorporating feedback from persons with lived experience would be important if we move forward with this. Revising some of the language to better fit that feedback that we might get from individuals. Increasing the list of service agencies. We already received outreach from 2 different organizations that have been added since this first launched. And then making recommendations based on the identified gaps in services. As a part of all of this work, we were able to present to state legislators last year at the city's meeting about the need for more resources directed towards street outreach work and permanent supportive housing. So we've learned a lot of important information through all of this work. And again, this campaign is one small piece of the overall work that we've been doing on homelessness. We have developed a document on strategies to prevent and end homelessness in the city. It contains 9 strategies, 43 goals. We've done it in collaboration with a large number of organizations in the city. It's been reviewed by the State Office to Prevent and End Homelessness. They gave us feedback that we incorporated, and we look forward to growing the work that we're doing on this. We know it takes all of us, and in current conditions, it's going to take even more of us to work on this together. So we're definitely looking for direction from the new administration and the new elected officials. But yeah, that's the campaign.
Thank you for the update, Martha. Any questions for the council? I know we have a busy night tonight. Alderman Seville?
Yeah, yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate Martha's work on this and city staff. I think this is important to focus people's efforts and what's really important and how to give responsibly to help the people that actually need the help. I have a question, though. There used to be signs in my ward that talks about giving responsibly that seems to be taken down. Is that part of this campaign?
Thanks, Martha. So Alderman Seville, this administration has chosen to take down the signs, and that is partially because this whole campaign is very thoughtful and well-intentioned, and we felt that there weren't enough, as much as it was nice to say give responsibly, who decides what's responsible and what's not. And when we're talking about safety, of course, safety is a huge issue as we have people in intersections, and that is dangerous. But what is also very unsafe is people living unhoused, and that causes an incredible risk to anyone. And I would like us to think about that question and how we can better work towards those goals and the 48 recommendations to ensure that we as a city are encouraging people to give in a way that can help our unhoused. It is true, as Martha said, there's one individual, but many of these individuals that are on the street cannot access the resources in which we are guiding people to give to, and that's for a variety of reasons. It is because, for example, Hesed House has a 6-month wait. They have to prove they've been in the area for 6 months before you can access their services. The Aurora Food Pantry, you have to no longer can walk up, I believe, to get services. You have to come by bus or car. They still help with street outreach through AID, which is great. But if you're unhoused, you can't cook frozen things well. It's hard, you can't keep things stored because you don't have refrigeration. There are a lot of issues as far as that goes. What we want to do is roll this out in a way that involves the most impacted, and that means our unhoused people, and asking questions in a way that are intentional and make sure that we're making decisions based on the most impacted with the most impacted. And I think Martha and her department has every intention of doing that moving forward, and is going to work more with our street outreach teams that are out there on a weekly basis, if not more, to do that. So that's the next step, is working with our most impacted to hear their reflection and what they need, and then going forward with the Give Responsibly, perhaps, or a modified version. Because this work is very important and is at forefront of this administration's goals, but we want to do it with those most impacted. Thank you.
So just to follow up on that, so it sounds like some of the communication pieces weren't used with this when it was rolled out. Additionally, they did not raise a significant amount of money per my conversation with Joe Jackson. And I don't know if you have any of those numbers, or if you send them over. If he hasn't, that's fine. But
I'll let Martha answer that question. I will say that the communication pieces went out, as Martha detailed, but only as paid ads. And I think that we want to work that our community sees more of that information, which is really important, about why people become homeless, what are the root causes, how can we address those root causes, and how can we inform the public on the best ways to help. And then let's look at that, who's deciding what's responsible or what's not.
Mr. Mayor.
go ahead, Alderman Bug.
Yeah, just a point of order. We're doing a lot of new things in the transition. It's going to be very important that each time someone comes to the mic, you state your name and your title for the full audience here and in Cyberland.
Sorry, you caught me on my first time not doing that. Sorry, Alderman Bug. Thank you for the reminder. Shannon Cameron, Chief of Staff, Mayor's Office.
Alderman Franco.
So I had a lot of feedback from my community that were very happy with these signs because they saw less panhandling, and their concern has always been, and this has been going for a while, the safety issue with them standing in the streets, and not too many people are comfortable when you come to their window and start knocking and asking for money. That's a problem. So I understand the homeless problem, and we should address that, but I don't know, I guess I'm gonna need how to connect the dots. When somebody hands somebody standing on a corner $2, how that's going into helping them finding a house. Where does that money go? Because if that's what we're doing, I don't know that's really helping the problem. If you talk to APD, they will tell you more times than not, it is not going to helping them eat or find housing. It's going for other things that we probably would frown upon. So I think if we're going to go through with whichever way we go, find out if they're getting $2 or $3 or $5 or $1, where's that money going? Because if it's not going to what our purpose is, then maybe we should think about an alternate way of doing it. And I think I would agree with my constituents that there's been less of that. Now I can't comment on how much money revenue we collected for that to help them out. But I think working on that piece is a good idea. But I don't know if handing somebody $2 or $3 in the street is going to find them a home or find them food necessarily. And I think until we find out where that money's going on a consistent basis, we should probably think those signs going back up. I think there's a lot of support for that. So that's all I have for that.
So I think the one piece in looking back at the timing of this and addressing the root causes is that those individuals, many of them we've now identified are not eligible for many of the services that we have, and we do have some very serious service gaps in the city. And I think without addressing those, it's hard to justify withholding anything. It's a very tricky and nuanced thing that needs to be looked at from a policy level. But I understand what you're saying.
Well, we're weighing the potential needs, the potential positive use for that money with the uncomfort from some of the people with dangers in the street and not wanting somebody to come up to their door. Police have told me many times that when people come up to your door, you don't know where they've been. You don't know when they're talking to you and that airborne thing is going on. That's not a good thing either. There's a lot of bad things in it. So if we're going to weigh this out and balance it, let's take into consideration what the community thinks also. Let's try to help everybody. But I got to make sure that we do that. And if we're going to do it, balance it, let's make sure that the balance going for those in need is actually going to provide for them in need. Because I don't know that it really is the way we're doing it right now.
Any other members of the council?
Mayor Lynch.
Alderman Barrero.
Sorry, just wanted to make a few comments. First of all, I wanted to commend staff for putting all this information together. It's a lot of information that's very helpful for people. And I'm hoping that this group of stakeholders that met, I hope that they'll continue to meet and continue to discuss the issue and look at the long-term solutions, because that's what we're talking about, the chronic homelessness because of some substance abuse or mental health issue or something like that. But that needs to be addressed. And also, I would just urge that if there could be more outreach done and reaching out to individuals. There's been some families out there with some small kids. I saw a lady with a kid on her shoulders, and that's not a good place for them. So if there could be more outreach efforts to educate them as to where to go for help, that would be great. Thank you.
Alderman Nunez.
You mentioned next steps that are going to be taken with the weather we get here in the Midwest. We really don't have much time. Do you have a rough ETA or timeline as we go into the summer and then fall, and then next we have a winter that starts in October sometimes?
So I have engaged with Wesley Church, who did contract with the city this past winter to hold a warming center. I've asked them to come and do a presentation to report back on that to City Council, and so we'll let you know about that as well. I think it's important that we also talk about cooling centers, knowing that the first thing that's going to happen is actually we're going to have very high temperatures and want to shelter people from that. And then, of course, yes, absolutely. So Martha's department and community services, as well as in a larger piece, will be continuing to work on this, look at steps, next steps for the cooling centers. and providing something. In the past, that's been city buildings a lot, and city staff has worked on that a lot. We need to kind of weigh what we think the best use of taxpayer dollars is to assist and make sure, because it's not just our unhoused, it's our community members that also have no air conditioning, have no ability to do that. They might need cool spaces as well. So that will be something we'll be talking about. And I think this is ever going. I believe you have a meeting tomorrow or the next day with the coalition.
So we have an internal working group with city staff that meets monthly. The stakeholders from the community meet quarterly, and then there are working groups that can meet optionally in between those if they're working on specific strategies or goals together. And to your point directly, last year we did begin work on the RFP for the temporary warming center in June. So yes, we do need to start thinking about that really soon. Mm-hmm.
And that'll come through the PHST committee, correct?
Yes.
Any other questions before we move on with the rest of the agenda? Thank you, Martha, for putting it together.
Thanks, Martha.